He never said what he needed, and she never asked. And somewhere in between, he assumed she knew, and what she assumed he was fine with. Yet something in the marriage went quiet. And tonight we're going to talk about the damage that lives inside the expectations nobody ever speaks out loud. I want to welcome you to the When a Man Loves a Woman podcast with Trevon, Barry, and Karl. Now, we're just regular guys who love God and who know that we've dealt with real issues in our relationships. And tonight we're going to talk specifically about uncommunicated expectations because we've all been there. We've all expected something from our female companion, or we had expectations that were placed on us and we knew absolutely nothing about them. Because you understand, I know unmet expectations is a huge topic, but yet we're going to focus specifically on the expectations that go unmet and the reason that they go unmet. Now, we're not talking about triflingness because that's just easy. We're not talking about people who know the expectation and just don't do it. We're talking about people who have a heart to try to do what's right in their relationship, and yet there's still unmet expectation. Because most relationships, honestly, most of that damage that comes to relationships isn't caused by bad intentions, it's caused by invisible standards. Men are especially prone to this, and they carry expectations they inherited but never examined. And so this isn't a communication skills episode. I want you to understand that we're not going to give you three steps to effective communication. But what we are going to do is get to the point where we can dig deeper and ask ourselves, men, how we expect and what we expect from the woman that we're with, because we want you to know more about you so that you can communicate effectively what you need from your partner. And that's going to be the key for us tonight to understand that. And always to get started, we like to play a video to kind of get things revved up. So here's our video for tonight that talks about unmet expectations.
Conversations we as couples never have. We have to be able to have conversations about expectations. We have to be on the same page. If he says that intimacy needs to happen 5 times a week, and I'm sitting over here saying, oh, twice is great, then we are not in agreement.
We are not the same. Go ahead.
Because, and a part of that is we sometimes come into things with these not unrealistic expectations, but it's just expectations that we hadn't talked about. We didn't talk about it. So I have an expectation and you have one. And when you expect something from me, you will get frustrated when I don't meet that expectation. But I didn't know about the expectation.
Come on, girl.
I didn't know that you expected 5. I expected 2. My needs was met. But you were sitting over here with met needs unmet. And you flip that on the other side. It's the same way, ladies. It's important that we know what to ask for from our spouse. Because he can't give it if you're not going to say it.
Get some good stuff, girl.
He can't. He didn't know that I didn't like flowers. You never, ever, ever in life have to bring me flowers. But if he bring me Skittles, now he's speaking my love language. Because that's what I like. But he would not have known that had I not communicated that I don't like flowers. So he thought he was doing something great by bringing me flowers. Well, I don't like them. I don't like them. But that comes through communication. That comes through us sitting down and talking about and being mature, married people, because we grown and we have to have grown people conversations and we have to talk about what grown people talk about. And grown people talk about needs. Grown people communicate what they need. And so you say that, hey, what is it that, and so me even being able to ask you that, do you think that I'm submissive? Most of us don't want to know the answer to that. If you honestly ask your spouse, you don't really want to know the answer. So you sometimes, and it's so true, we have trained our spouses what to ask and what not to ask us. Because if you ask me certain things and I always get an attitude, I'm teaching you, don't ask me that no more.
Goodness.
Don't ask me that anymore. But we have to, and so here's the thing, sister friend. This is when I say, me and y'all leave the room, sister friends. We have to get before Jesus, and we have to really own up, and we have to really see. We got to, hey, God, I need to be healed. I need to be healed because I'm so broken that can't nobody say nothing to me.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, that was a lot. That was a
Yeah.
lot. um, and that sets the stage for us because so many times we have expectations and we don't say them, and so the driving question for us tonight is, what are you holding your relationship accountable to that you never actually said out loud? What are those internal expectations that you are holding your spouse to, your girlfriend to, your fiance to, but yet you never said it out loud, and it's so hardwired in you. You walk around offended because she hasn't done that, and that's what hurts us. That's what causes us to disconnect in our relationships. And so what I want you to do tonight, and what we're going to start off with, is really, I want you to think about a time where you were disappointed in a relationship and you realized that the other person had no idea you even had that expectation. What did it feel like? And where did that expectation come from?
If I could start that one off real quick, just a thought that actually came to my mind, and I was a little taken aback when he put it on me. We have to recognize that expectations change over time, and one thing that I have noticed in past relationships, that how, at least how I operate in a relationship, going into a relationship, I tend to tell my partner that I don't have a lot of expectation. I don't like to place expectations onto my partner. Other than literally the golden rule, like, be treated as you want, treat people as you want to be treated. So ideally, like, if you have that's the simple basis of a relationship, we can build off of that. We can go anywhere with that. That's how I've always looked at relationship. um but anytime that I've had a relationship end and I've ever felt anything uh merely close to being disappointed in a relationship, and where expectations is involved, I come to the realization that, again, my expectations start to change, but then I struggle with actually voicing how, like, what that expectation is and how to even go about to build on that expectation from you.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's good. Because we can keep this stuff on the inside, but it doesn't help anybody if it's on the inside. And looking back retrospectively is good to help you for the next relationship, but it doesn't help you in whatever that relationship is that didn't go the way you wanted it to go. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and the thing is, because we have expectations, we have them because we were raised with them. We were raised to expect this is what the woman is supposed to do, this is what the man's supposed to do, and we those things get hardwired in us, and we don't really know how to even deal with them until we watch this, Carl, until we get in touch with our emotions and our thoughts. Jesus.
Ooh, Pastor
So
got some feelings in there.
Jesus. But it's important because we have expectations and we've got to be able to talk about them. Like even in that video, they talked about when they didn't even talk about sex and how often
Mm-hmm.
sex should be and all those types of things. And the truth is, there are expectations. And sometimes we shy away from them or whatever else. But whatever the reason is, we've got to get into the habit of clearly saying, this is what I expect,
Mm-hmm.
and then lay it out there for discussion. Now I guess I got to say up front here, based on our episode last week, we're not talking about you just saying, this is what I expect and you better do it.
Right.
We're not, Lord Jesus, we're not saying that. But what we are saying is, hey, this is what is in me as an expectation, and that leading to a discussion that we have about what our expectations are, so there can be some kind of agreement. We want to ultimately get to agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely thought I was wired different because I don't have a long checklist of things my wife is supposed to do for me. But before I got married, I saw enough to know that she was the woman I wanted. That's why I said yes. And I'm not saying that we didn't have any surprises, because I did have an expectation. Like, I thought she was going to be. I grew up with a single mom, and my mom was the disciplinary. That's who I was used to seeing as my grandmother was the disciplinary. You know, my, my mom and her parents were together, so he was the big things, but day to day disciplinary was her mom. So I didn't know that I was going to be I thought I was going to be the one just coming in and say, hey, let's throw this ball. But I can't say that that I was so disappointed about it. Um, but there are personality things and just like different ways of thinking in general that you don't know until you're living together every day, and I do think that's normal. But see, the thing is, I know me and I have flaws, so I don't expect anybody to be perfect. That's the way I look at things. So my expectations, I don't have expectations where I say you have to do this or you have to do that, and if you don't do it, then there's a problem. If I have a problem, I'm gonna I'm gonna talk about it. If I don't like something, I'm gonna talk about it. Now, I can't say that that conversation is always gonna go well, and the conversations don't always go well. Um, but I will discuss them. But that is why I think that communication is important, because like someone said, um, you get married at 25. When you're 45, you're not going to have the same expectations. So you have to stay in constant communication, because I like
Yep.
for me, cooking and cleaning don't matter, right?
Hmm.
Like, that is cherry on the top, right? If you look at me, I eat. I don't need anyone to feed me. I'm gonna eat. I'm a
Right,
grown man. I could pick
right,
up a vacuum, right? But it's
right,
it's great if your wife does that. Because I
right.
was alone a lot when I was young. For me, what's important is spending time together in communication.
Hmm.
That could be emotional or whatever, but that's what's important to me. So people I love to spend that time. That's why I think when I go to families' houses, I linger. My wife is like, "It's time to go." You know. So that's
Out
what
here
I
overstaying the
that's what
welcome.
I care about. Exactly.
You know that,
So
that's amazing, because it takes a real reflective person to really look at what they expect and when they expect it, because you could also had some expectations before you got into a relationship. My wife's going to do this, my wife's going to do this, and then you get into the relationship and you say, I don't want that, I don't want that,
there,
and you may have even already had her get into gear to do those things, but then you realize that's not important. Or as the relationship matures, you then also change what your expectations are, because now,
Hmm.
like in the early days, my wife, she was not a cooker. She wasn't a cooking person, but she knew that I wanted her to cook,
hmm
and she cooked and she learned how to cook, and every day, every night, we had a prepared dinner. Well, now 31 years in, she doesn't have to cook now. It's a blessing when she does. However, she doesn't have to, and there are certain times, like my birthday or whatever else, where I'd say, hey, I'd really love your whatever, whatever your dish is, and then she will
right.
she will do that. But beyond that, I'm like you. I don't need nobody to make sure that I eat. Praise the Lord. But I'm gonna make sure I eat on my own. Thank you, Jesus. But it's key, though, that we do understand what is expected of us, number one, but then what our expectations are of our spouse or our girlfriend, fiance, and then we have to let them know, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And when expectations change, I guess we have to add that into this as well. When those expectations change, we have to be able to express that, because the worst thing, I don't even know if this is worse than not understanding or knowing what the expectation is, but when you're trying to meet an expectation that has been expressed and communicated, but it changed, and you're sitting there doing it because you think that's what you agreed to, and then you find out later on, well, no, I really don't want that now.
Yeah, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah,
I used to
yeah.
need that back then. Now I need something different.
Right,
You
right,
know?
right. But so that whole communication piece is vital, not just what we need, but also what we don't need, because those things happen as we grow and mature. Certain things aren't as important as they at that time as they may have been previously.
But also another thing that just comes to my mind with that too, I think it's also okay for the man in that situation, and I don't want to make it seem like women are placing ridiculous expectations on their men. But most cases, what ends up happening is that the man will initially share the expectation, but then something changes, and then we don't know how to go about expressing what that change in expectation ends up happening and ended up coming up. So uh, it's also important to for the man to recognize that you have to be able to live with yourself, but also be willing to put the work in to notice that I can't live up to that expectation
Mm.
and actually vocalize that to your partner. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I don't want to live up to that expectation. I don't want for you to continue to have that expectation for me and be disappointed every single time that I don't meet that expectation.
Right.
So like you said, it keeps falling back on that communication part where for you giving the expectation, but then also for you to recognize that I can't live up to that expectation.
Right.
So I'm gonna be completely brutally honest with you, and it's not gonna be easy. That I'm sorry, I can't live up to that. I'm not saying that I'm not gonna stop trying, because that's a whole different other topic.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, and that's the important part about communication, letting your spouse know where you are in your life, and depending on what it is, I mean that's where grace comes in, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to have grace for each other. But uh, I I don't know, because you both of you might disagree
Get it
with
out,
me.
get it out, get it
Come
out.
on,
Come on,
say
I
it,
know,
Doc. Say
I
it.
see it. Get it out,
But I
get
but
it
I
out.
heard the intro. The premise was that this falls a lot on men. And yes, I do believe that men have uncommunicated expectations as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't have the stats, so but I think
Come on,
I
sir.
think, and thinking is the act of not knowing. I think that a lot more women have uncommunicated expectations than men. I believe that's why, one of the reasons why women initiate divorce more than men,
Mm.
because a lot of times they have these expectations, they're waiting for us to meet that expectation, they don't communicate to us, and then when we don't meet it, they're upset. And
Mm.
then when you ask what did I do, and they say, and if you love me, you know,
Oh
Yep.
man,
but I
You
don't
oh
know.
know.
man, you know.
So I'm not trying to bash women or anything. All I'm saying is I don't know if men have as many expectations, because a lot of times I think we marry a woman because of what we saw before. We don't
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, now she's my wife, now I expect her to do these things that she wasn't doing before.
Mm-hmm. That's real.
I don't.
I think once again, we're not trying to blame women, so I need to be able to say that as a caution. But I do think on a certain level, that men have a restrained list of expectations, and they pretty much stay to the basics, you know, and they pretty much are adjustable based on where your situation is in life, you know, and I do think that women have a lot of expectations because they're the ones with the dreams of marriage. Let's be honest. Most men,
Yeah.
if they could get away with not marrying, they probably would. You know, and truth be told, if we weren't married, would we be in a 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom house with all these bathrooms and everything else? Probably not. We'd be in a condo somewhere. enjoying our lives. What do we call it? A bachelor pad. So
Yes.
certain of the expectations in life do come from our wives because I believe they actually raise us up and
Yes.
and and really expand how we see life. And I think that's a good thing
Which
about
is a
those
good thing. Yes, yes, I agree.
yeah, but if they don't explain that up front, then we will revert to whatever we think, which may not be in alignment with they think. And then without that conversation, there's a growing frustration that happens in that relationship. And I think that's really what we're trying to address today is that there has to be some level of expectation that's discussed and communicated because I think something spiritually happens to a man when he's not able to name the expectation or even to ask what his wife's expectations are. Like,
Hmm.
what do you expect from me, when I'm home? You work hard, you have a long day, you come home, what do you expect? And I remember years ago, my wife and I, we had this discussion when the kids were younger because um, and please don't judge me. But when the kids were younger and they were prone to cry and stuff like that, I just don't have the grace for a crying baby. But I know babies cry. That's kind of part of the
Yes.
package. And now we were blessed because we had three kids that really barely cried. But literally when I'd hear one peep, it would shock me and everything else. So she really did the yeoman's work when it came to the kids when they were in those younger ages. And when they got a little older and could communicate and move around, then I was probably more engaged than I needed to be. But we finally had a discussion about what she expected of me because she had certain expectations in her
Hmm.
mind for what the father, the daddy would do for the kids. And I wasn't meeting those. And that had to be a serious discussion so we could really get on the same page. Because the truth is, and we need to do a discussion about this at some point. The key is that you got to get into and stay into agreement. And so these
Yes.
unmet
Ooh, thank you.
expectations, these uncommunicated expectations, end up undermining the agreement in the house because you then take it personally. Well, she's
Hmm.
doing this intentionally. Well, he's doing this intentionally, which may not be the case, especially if it hasn't been communicated to you.
That's that's so good because there's just a lot of resentment going on in the house about things that just aren't even talked about.
Right, right.
You know, these voices in your head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
don't mean to say that as like crazy or anything like that, but it's just you telling you, oh, he's feeling this way, that's why he did that. She's feeling that way,
Right.
that's why she did this. When really it's just that I wanted something, I didn't share it with you,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't do it. Ooh, that we got to be in constant agreement is so good.
Amen.
Um, and constant agreement, the way I look at it, constant agreement isn't necessarily that we always agree,
Right.
but we're going to come to compromises on some of these points too. That's because
Absolutely.
compromises are also agreements.
Right.
With
See, we don't have to agree on everything, but we always have to stay in agreement.
agreement. Oh, it's so good.
You
I'm
know,
sorry, I'm about to do the hallelujahs and amens.
we got to get a soundtrack. We got to get a soundtrack.
Only God can do it.
Yeah. Hey, watch out now. I felt that. I felt that.
Yeah.
But
Now,
and
but
that's and
one.
that's what's so
Sorry.
key is that if we're going to, because our goal is to uplift men and support women. So we want to break the log jam tonight in your relationship where you're really taking the time to actually make room for these types of conversations. They may be tense, and that's okay. You may not. You may have to have multiple conversations because emotions run high, and that's okay. But just don't not have the conversation because you have a wall put up, as the lady said in the video. Because sometimes our wives they make it very clear to us, by how they respond. Don't bring that topic up. But yet that
Mhm.
usually is the very topic that
That
needs to
needs
be
to be
discussed. And brothers, I want to tell you, even those topics where there may be tension, you still have to um dig into it. And you as the leader of your home, You've got to create the space for that. You may have to do a little preamble before you have the discussion to say, listen, I know we normally argue about this, but I really want to engage this where there's no arguing. I know you don't agree with me and I don't agree with you, but let's see how we can get on the same page concerning this topic, and you talk it through. Because if you're both mature, then you can talk it through and get to where you're supposed to get.
Mhm.
Because here's the truth one, because I want us to understand this about some truths we want to leave you with in this episode. You can't hold someone accountable to a standard they never agreed to.
Whew.
See, that's key. Because you're having these expectations. My wife ought to do this. My wife ought to do that. My wife ought to do this. Yeah, but did you ever talk to her about it? Number one. And number two, did she agree to do
Mm-hmm.
that? Because if she has not agreed to do that thing, then how can you hold her accountable for it?
Mm-hmm.
You see? And so it's not just, barking out commands, well, you need to do such and such. You need to do such and such. Come on, that's not God's way. God's way is for us to lead our family, and we have to be able to express what our needs are, what our expectations are, and then have a reasonable, rational conversation where they can be discussed, they can be challenged and critiqued and maybe modified and compromised, as you said, Barry, so that we can get on the same page. And even though we disagree, we are not in disagreement because our agreement is still in place. That's the key thing. Because when we have unexpressed expectations, it's not just about communication. That's the key thing. It really is about fairness. Hear me today, brothers.
Mhm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
about fairness. You think it's fair that you hold your wife to a standard that you didn't even let her know about or have her agree to? And I say this as well to those couples who are pursuing marriage. Get this stuff on the table early. In fact, I pray you have serious premarital counseling so that you know exactly what you're getting into. Now, of course, you don't know all the
Right.
expectations up front, but what you do expect, you should have a discussion about it. Well, I expect my wife to do such and such. Say it. Talk about it. And give her the space to also allow you to tell you what her expectations are, because that's when you're really having communication that's meaningful, because you got to be fair. I say this because of scripture, but God says he hates unjust weights and balances, weights and measures. In other words, you can't expect something from somebody that you yourself aren't willing to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
you just said what I was thinking in my head because I because I was
Mhm.
thinking sometimes in a relationship people are holding you to a standard that they don't hold themselves to that standard,
Come on.
but they're arguing with you about something that you see them doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you're expecting me to walk
Mm-hmm.
perfectly in this situation, and 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 you're not even doing that. It doesn't mean that I don't want to change. It doesn't mean that I don't want to do right. But how are you coming down on me for something you do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were right. You were right in my head.
Yeah. And not only something you do, but something you like doing.
You like to do.
You know.
You
Mhm.
find joy in it.
Yeah. But yet you get upset when I do
Yeah.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a level of acceptance that has to also come into play between these expectations, because like, even for instance, for me, um I know that I have always been the quiet type, and even with my most recent relationship, um just me not being as vocal about what I may be going through. And even then, most men will hold on to what it is that they're going through, just so that way they don't bring these stresses into the relationship. But then what ends up happening is the silence about the expectation, it's not protecting the relationship, it's really hollowing it out. like
Mm.
like you start again, like, if it's something from, well, I can only speak for myself because I'm very good at compartmentalizing what I deal with at work, and then once I leave out of work, work is at work. So now I go home and, all right, I'm decompressing from my day. And now I'm going to go into, all right, this is, I live by myself. So, I don't have my partner with me. So, it's like, all right, I'm going to talk to you over about whatever it is that comes up to mind. Now, yes, at the end of your day, you're going to be tired if you're working 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever your job is, manual labor, physical labor, whatever you may have it. But it's again going back to that communication aspect. If he's keeping that expectation to himself because he doesn't want the conflict, or because he doesn't think he should have to say it, or because he doesn't believe it will be heard, the result ends up being the resentment that's built, and a relationship is going to start growing distant, and you tend to start losing track of where the relationship is really headed if you don't initiate that conversation.
Yeah, I know about that being quiet. So over the years, what I learned is I'm gonna say it regardless. That way, it's out there.
Right.
If it doesn't, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but basically, if the other person doesn't adhere to it, or doesn't agree, or doesn't respond well to it, but I still said it. That way, I'm not sitting there festering, my blood pressure going up. You know how I felt.
Mhm.
Because what I know is the only person I can change is me. I can't change another person. I can't make another person um, do something they don't want to do. Um, so you got like I just believe you got to get it out there. Um,
Mm.
those are the um, hard conversations, right? Because I know about that being quiet. You don't you don't want any confrontation. You don't want the argument. You don't want the yelling.
That's
You
right.
don't want the cold shoulder.
Right.
You just want to keep peace. But if you're festering, that's not really peace. That's
That's right.
really silent chaos, in my opinion. And I think that's how a lot of men have heart attacks and
Hmm. Hmm.
strokes, and
Yeah.
because they suffered in silence.
Right. Right.
And I think sometimes you'll be surprised that your partner, even if they don't respond to it well at first, but at least they know now, and you might see them changing over time.
Hmm.
I- if you got a good one.
Yes. Yes.
let me
You got a good one.
let me qualify that.
That's right. That's exactly right. You
Yeah,
know.
because I know sometimes it's hard for us especially men, to share those things.
Right. 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 Exactly. That's exactly right. But now, men will say she should know what I need. And if I have to ask, it doesn't count. And that's a mindset that I know I went into my marriage with, and that's a long time ago,
Mhm.
31 years ago. But there was a certain part of me um, that that said, well, if she loved me, she ought to know. You know,
Wow.
she ought to know. She ought to know what I want. She ought to know what I like. Even 31 years in, well, she ought to know. And that's a damaging mindset. And I want
Yeah.
you to hear me, brothers. That's a damaging mindset because you are still holding an expectation. Not that she does something, but that also that she knows something. And that may not be the case at all.
Yeah.
Because if you really have not explained it and discussed it, then how's she supposed to know? And it's not by osmosis. And the truth, getting back to the point you made earlier, Barry, is that we don't want to be held to those unspoken expectations that are expected of us just because. Because
Yeah.
men need clarity. Men need one, two, three. And most of the times our wives, they criticize us because we don't get it. And you're like, you wanted me to do what? I did. You wanted me to pick up that signal or that hint? I'm oblivious to it. But yet we get in a lot of trouble because our wives are expecting us to read their minds.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't mean to cut you off.
go ahead, Doc.
I'm not talking long, but the in that what I've heard in over the years is why you playing stupid? I'm not playing stupid. I really don't know. Maybe I
Yes,
am
sir.
stupid. I really just don't know.
Mm, mm.
I'm telling you. But honestly, mature love, and I need you all to hear me. Mature love doesn't require mind reading, right?
No.
It requires honesty.
Yeah.
And even that, and like you said, even with the in the hard discussion, you can't self censor. Even with the things that you prefer not to talk about, but yet you know they need to be talked about, you've got to make room to have those discussions. Because
Yeah.
a lot of men, we will self censor because we feel like, well, if I tell her I need this, if I tell her I need, this type of intimacy, if I tell her I need this, then I'm diminishing myself. You're not diminishing yourself by letting your needs be known.
Yeah.
Because how can your wife meet what you need if you don't express it? I guess there are situations where women will flip the script and will, criticize you and try to demean you for the fact that you express those needs. But I don't think that that's not a good one, as you say, Barry. That's
Right.
not a good one because a good woman, particularly one who loves you, wouldn't respond like that. That's a way to hurt you and to undermine your dignity as a man. And that's not going to work. So let's talk to our men real quick before we transition. So, um, men, what I want to encourage you to do tonight is to really identify that expectation that you're currently holding in silence. And I want you just to be honest and name it. Name it to yourself. I'm not saying shout it out or whatever, or go to some other man to validate it. Because what you feel and what you think you need, that's what you need. So brothers, I want to charge you to name your expectation to yourself and then set up a time to name it to the woman that you love. But also ask yourself, where did this expectation come from? You know, because you could have had a bad example as a father, and that
Mm-hmm.
bad example as a father, you picked up that expectation, not realizing that you picked up some of his bad habits. And so
Yeah.
you have to ask yourself, did I choose this for me, or did somebody else hand this to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like Barry, you made it, and I asked you to tell us about the taking out the garbage. That's a simple one. Do you remember that story we were talking
Well,
about last
yeah.
night?
Well, yeah. I mean, this was a time when I was shacking with a woman.
Well,
Um,
Jesus. Amen.
yeah, and she used to have a conversation with my mom, and always tell her like he won't even he doesn't take out he never takes out the garbage. And I
Mm,
used to tell her like you got to remind me, and she would say, "You're a man. Why should I have to remind you?" And I guess when she grew up, her dad took out the garbage. That was a responsibility he had, and I understand it, from a man's point of view. But when I grew up, my stepfather he worked for Public Works, and his big thing was these they, these guys around here they don't take out the trash right.
mm,
So he used to take the trash from our house, put it in the back of our van, drive us to
Mm,
school, and take the trash himself. So
wow.
my brothers and I, we never had to touch the trash. This
Wow.
is from the age I was 14 on. Um, so as I got older, I just never thought about taking out the trash because it's just something I didn't
it was
do.
always taken care of.
It
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
always taken care of. So, this woman had this expectation of me, but it just wasn't something that I did. It's not that it wasn't something I couldn't do. It
Yeah.
just wasn't a habit for me. That's why I used to say, you just got to remind me.
Right. No,
But
that's that's good.
she didn't want to do that because she felt like I'm a man. I shouldn't have to remind you to do this.
My
you
God.
know,
My God.
which I still don't agree with.
Right. Right. No, that's right. Because here's the thing: when there are uncommunicated expectations, what ends up happening, and brothers, I want you to hear me with this. This applies to the ladies as well, but I'm really talking to our brothers before we move to this next segment. We're going to talk to our ladies, but you got to stop grading people on tests that they
Mm-hmm.
don't know they were taking in the first place.
Woo.
That's one of the worst feelings in the world to know that you're being examined, you're being tested, and yet you have no idea that it's testing time. And even in school, even if it was a pop quiz, they would still announce that there's a pop quiz. And there are some men who feel like they are under a test because they know there's something they're not doing, but yet it hasn't been communicated. And because it hasn't been communicated, the man is taking a test that he wasn't aware of, and he's being graded, and sadly, he's being failed because he didn't know he was taking a test. And that's why unmet, uncommunicated expectations are so dangerous to the relationship, because they end up hollowing out the relationship, because there's more, watch this, there's more that is unspoken than that is spoken. And you're having a whole discussion with yourself about what you need, but you won't make the space to have that discussion with your spouse. And I want you to stop that. I want you to stop grading your wife on a test that she didn't even know that she was taking, because you have these expectations in your mind, and you're actually looking for her to not meet the expectation, and then you want to hold her accountable for it. See, that's why you always do that. Well, that's not right. That's not right. So stop grading people on tests that they don't know that they're taking. All right, so we spoke to the brothers. Now, Karl, why don't you speak to the ladies and help them understand how we support them in this uncommunicated expectations area?
Well, let me try to paint the picture to you. So, by all means, ladies, what does it feel like to be held to a standard that you were never aware existed, and then to be told that you keep failing at this thing that you never actually told mattered? I did bring it up a couple episodes back. How does it feel to know that you are an expert at a certain field, at a certain topic, and to be questioned on it daily, day by day, and then you're looked at like you don't know what you're talking about, and you are a known expert at what it is that you're talking about? How does that feel? Um, how to create safety for a man to name what he needs without it becoming a weapon used against her. Truthfully, if I can speak to you, ladies, I know that we've touched on it before. It's not what you say; it's how you say it. You can voice your opinion all you want, but if there is a negative connotation behind it, no matter how many times that you say that you love your chicken fried or however you want it prepared, and then I put it in the broiler. Now all of a sudden you got broiled chicken that you what am I gonna do with this? This is an expectation that was never shared, but your man is actually giving that effort. Don't overlook that effort though, because truthfully, if that expectation was never shared in the beginning, how are you going to grade him on a test? Like if I go into a math class to go take a math test, and now you giving me English, like I'm ready to give you 2 plus 2 is 4.
Right,
But now
right.
you talking about if if I can't even give an example. I used to be bad at English going to school, but it's like I loved math. So it's like it's the same exact thing. How can you go into a situation and not truly actually make sure that your man is even on the same playing field?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really what it boils down to. Our
Right.
goal for the relationship is that if we are on the same playing field, if my desk is the playing field for the relationship, and somehow I have now left the playing field, and now I'm in the bathroom, or if I'm in the kitchen, nope, I need you to come back to this to the desk real quick. Nope, nope. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay for you to reel us back in, like Barry said. Yes, sometimes we do lose track. It's
Right.
okay for you to reel us in. Don't feel no way about it, because there are times that there is a lot on our plates that we might not be aware that if this is something that is important to my better half, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm gonna. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off track to that. Now that, guess what, you voiced your opinion in sharing that this is important to you. Now I know I'm gonna give it effort.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's real good. But one thing, Carl, that you said was that um, when you share your heart with your wife, and then she uses that as a weapon against you, that's a tough situation to be in. It's real. And ladies, we want you to understand that you can't open the door um, to have the man talk about what his issues are, and then once he puts them out there, you then use it as a weapon to come after him and to tear him down, because that's not fair. That's
Right.
not fair, and that's not nice. And really, that's part of what ends up happening, because we get into this mindset that once they made themselves vulnerable, then we have a right to just say whatever we want to say or do whatever we want to do, and that's not fair to that man. That when he finally has opened up, particularly men who aren't really that expressive,
Right.
but they actually open up. You invite him to open up, and the moment that you invite him to open up, then you use against him what he shared. Like, I really would like when you come home that you would greet me warmly. Why you got
Mm-hmm.
it? Well, why I got to greet you warmly? Why, are you some kind of punk or something? Why that's not how you respond to that situation.
Yeah.
Give him the space to communicate it, but then don't use it as a weapon, because
Right.
then you're fighting each other, you're hurting each other, rather than being a team together. And you need to be a team,
Yeah.
because you're not going to win at marriage uh, trying to be an individual. You're going to win at marriage when you function as a team.
Yeah. That's facts. And I believe, I do believe a lot of relationship problems come from expectations nobody ever talked about. Like like if a man doesn't provide a house, a car, and a
Hmm.
couple of vacations every year, he ain't a good man.
Right,
And
right,
if a woman doesn't cook, clean, and keep her man happy in the bedroom,
right,
she's
right,
not a good woman.
right.
We were told what a good husband looked like and what a good wife looks like.
Yeah.
Some people told women that all men cheat,
Hmm.
and some people told men that all women want their money.
Right, right.
And I think all of us have heard that all marriages fail. We carry all that into all of our relationships.
Yep, yep.
Um, so we got to be cognizant of where that information comes from, because some of it comes from wisdom and some of it comes from pain. And if we're not
Mm.
if we're not really paying attention to where the root of that information is, we'll have a lot of arguments over things that we don't even necessarily want. It's
Right,
just that we were told that that's what we wanted.
right, right. No, but that's good. The expectations that come from a place of pain. Man, that's good, because we have trauma that's teaching us and training us,
Mhm.
and we bring that trauma into our relationship, and we don't talk about it, we don't explain it, we just act out of it, and then we traumatize our wives because of the trauma that we're living with. Man, that's so good. And brothers, that's why we have to
Mm-hmm.
we have to get in touch with this. Why am I this way? Why do I get angry at these types of things? And it's not to condemn you, God knows it's not to condemn you, but you
Amen.
have to know yourself so that you can actually possess your vessel. That's what the Bible says, to possess your vessel. So that means you got to know what's going on the inside of you. There may be certain buttons that when they're pushed, you fly into a rage. And you haven't
Mm.
really sat down and said, why do I get mad like this?
Mm.
And it could be a word. We did a years ago. We like the disc um personality testing, and we do that with every new partner in our church. And one of the aspects of it is that not only does the disc work, personality assessment work in the church, but it also works in your marriage. So we did a marriage retreat, and we talked about the disc and how it helps you. And one of the things that I learned from my wife, and this is something that I talk, how I talk, is that I would always say, well, I need you to do such and such. Now, I didn't know at that point that when just saying those words to my wife was like starting an argument. Hey, I need you to do
Mm-hmm.
such and such. I didn't mean it that way. I was just saying, hey, this is something I'd like for you to handle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But those words to her, because I'm a D personality, and she is a C personality. So to say need ignites stress. So
Oh
what I
wow.
learned was
Because it's
that
pressure. It's like
Mhm.
pressure.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And
It's
so
a
what I
demand.
learned is
It's a
that rather than
demand.
saying
Yep.
I need you to, I would ask, would you be able to do such and such? That
Wow.
simple change.
Yeah, yeah.
That simple change was able to take our whole communication to another level because now I wasn't, I mean, I was just used to using the word I need you to. But the truth is that that phrase I need you to was a triggering phrase for my wife. And had
Wow.
we not learned it, I would still be doing it and she would still be frustrated by it because we hadn't talked about it and she never let me know, hey, listen, when you say that I need to, that really irritates me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was in the context of us actually being in this this marriage retreat where I asked her, well, does that bother you when I say I need to? And she said, yes, it does. And that opened my eyes like, whoa. Well, how about if I say I would like you to do that? I like that a whole lot better.
Yeah.
How about if I said, would you be able to do such and such? Oh, I love that. So I took I need to out of my vocabulary because now I knew better. Because when you know better, brothers, let me tell you, when you know better, you
You
can
do
Do better.
do better.
do
Come on here, somebody. This is where we need to have an organ sound right there because that's good preaching. Because we don't have it all together. None of us, the women in our lives that we love, the men, women, I'm talking to you, the men that you love, we don't have it all together.
right.
But we have to have grace to be able to let us grow. Now we don't expect you. I know I'm not the same man I was 31 years ago when I stood at the altar and got married. I know I'm not. Thank God I'm not,
Thank
because I
God.
was a mess. Because there was so much I did not know. But
I'm
but
with
but
you, Pastor.
we, huh?
I'm with you. I understand.
You see, there's so much we didn't know, but thank God we grew up and became the men that God wanted us to be. You know, and that's the thing we have to understand. We're about to close here, but listen, I want to just encourage you because the most the most honest thing, brothers, that you can do in your relationship is to stop waiting for people who love you to guess what you need.
Mm.
Start trusting them and actually say exactly what you need. Don't have people around you guessing because that guessing will hurt the relationship because it causes instability in the relationship. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Let me say it like this: say what you need so that your partner can then respond appropriately to the need. And it can be a discussion where you all stay in agreement about whatever that need is. And I'm telling you, that's where God is going to bless your relationship. That's where God is going to take your relationship to a whole nother level. Brothers, any other final comments before we get out of here?
That was so good. Just voice your
Say it with your
expectations.
chest.
Say it with your chest. I like it.
Say it with your chest.
Amen. That's good. Say it with your chest.
Say it with your chest.
Amen. Don't keep it hidden because you're
No.
hollowing out your relationship when you keep your expectations uncommunicated. Communicate them, get them on the table, have the discussions, be mature about it, and watch how your relationship will go to the next level. Well,
Whew.
listen, why don't you like and share this video? Why don't you subscribe to the channel? You can even set the bell to know that at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights, we're coming on with a new podcast. But we encourage you even to visit our website, which is www.whenamanloves.com. Whenamanloves.com. We have a whole website there. You can catch up on the episodes you may have missed, but you can also send us questions because next week we're actually going to have an episode where we simply answer all of your questions. So why don't you get them in so next week we can come prepared to answer your questions. www.whenamanloves.com, and you can send us your questions so we can respond to you, as well as you can post them to our social media, Wham Law, WAMLAW, When a Man Loves a Woman show on all the platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. post us a comment so we can know what's going on, how we can answer your questions, because we're doing this because we want to share with you what we've learned, and we also are learning in the process. So God
Amen.
bless you. We're grateful for you being with us here with When a Man Loves, and we wish you nothing but peace. We encourage you to have the discussions, say it with your chest, as Karl said, and let's get the issues on the table. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
Amen.